Splatoon released for the Nintendo Wii U on May 29, 2015. The game would grow to become one of the fastest and best-selling titles for the system. The game's concept is simple. You play as humanoid squids called Inklings that can switch between their human and squid forms at the press of a button. You choose your weapon and your clothing and head online to face off in 4 vs 4 battles. Your weapon shoots ink, which is used not only to take out your opponents, but to paint the ground beneath you. This ink is your turf. You can use your squid form to swim through your team's ink to get around quickly, climb up walls, and hide from the enemy team. Be careful of enemy ink though. You can't swim or walk quickly through enemy ink, and it damages you the longer you stand in it, making you more vulnerable to attacks. When you take out an enemy, they return to their spawn location, which you see at the start of the match. Splatoon only has one respawn location for either team, so you have a general idea of where your enemy is going to be coming from when they respawn. However, swimming back to the field isn't their only option. By tapping the icon of a teammate on the gamepad, you can jump to their position on the field at any time. This is called a super jump. This allows you to get back in the fight quickly and keep the pressure on the enemy team. Super jumps display a marker on the ground when you're in the process of jumping, so bad jumps can leave you vulnerable in enemy ink and leave you as a free target to the enemy. Weapons come in 6 different classes: shooters, rollers, chargers, blasters, sloshers, and splatlings. In most cases, each of these weapons come in 3 different variants: short range, mid-range, and long range. Short-range weapons typically fire more quickly and are more forgiving, but require you to close the gap on your opponent. This can be especially difficult in some areas where long-range weapons have long lines of sight. Long-range weapons can control from a far distance, but typically have a slower firing rate, can't cover ground as well, and are much less forgiving. Weapons are supplied by an ink tank that you wear during battle. You have a set amount of shots you can fire from a full tank. Once it's empty, you have to use your team's ink to refill it quickly by using your squid form. Shooters are straightforward with a set and continuous fire rate. These weapons have the most variation in distance, firing rate, spread, and coverage. Rollers cover ground by rolling across it or flicking their weapon. These weapons are great for hiding and catching your opponents off guard. This class also covers brushes, which are capable of traveling more quickly, but require multiple swings to kill an opponent. Chargers are the sniper class. This weapon charges as you hold the trigger, building in both damage output and length until it reaches full charge. This weapon requires precision, but allows you to kill the opponent from a great distance with a single shot. Blasters throw out shots that explode and have an area of effect. Even if you don't hit your opponent directly, they can still be damaged by the explosion. This weapon can hit behind walls and around corners and can zone out enemies from a general area. Sloshers throw out ink that falls uniformly. They are unique in their ability to hit opponents directly below them. If an enemy is on a ledge underneath you, the falling ink from your slosher can still hurt them. Splatlings are similar to shooters, but require you to hold the trigger to charge a shot. This charge builds both distance and the length of time you'll be firing. You fire upon releasing the trigger at a rate that is faster than a typical shooter. In addition to your starting weapon, you are also given a sub-weapon and a special. Sub-weapons accompany your main weapon and can be used at any time, provided you have the ink necessary. Sub-weapons include bombs that can damage your opponent, disruptors that hinder your opponent's movement, temporary walls that can provide you protection, and point sensors that can mark an opponent's location. Special weapons are powerful weapons that can turn the tide of battle. These include ink strikes that cover a set portion of the map in your team's ink, echolocators that mark all enemies currently on the field, bubblers that give you an invincible barrier that you can share with your teammates, krakens that can chase down opponents and kill them with a single jump, killer whales that shoot damaging beams of sound across the map, ink zookas that give you a temporary, long-range, quick-firing weapon that kills in a single shot, and bomb rushes that let you throw off a dozen or more of your sub-weapon in quick succession. Special weapons can only be used after filling the special gauge, which you do by covering the ground. All maps in Splatoon are designed symmetrically. with spawn points and stage obstacles mirroring one another. Some maps are designed with high ground and long, open lines of sight, giving greater power to long-range weapons, while others have more tight and narrow spaces, giving greater strength to close-range weapons. Some are very flat, while others are vertical. This variety makes it so that learning how to play for every individual map requires you to develop a versatile playstyle in order to take advantage of certain strengths and weaknesses depending on the map. There are a wide variety of clothing items to choose from, including shoes, shirts, and headgear, but these clothes are for more than just making a fashion statement. Each piece of gear has a main ability and up to 3 sub-abilities. These abilities offer enhancements to in-game mechanics such as increasing ink efficiency, making you run and swim faster, defense and damage buffs, allowing you to respawn and super jump faster, and increasing the rate in which you get your special, and also its duration. Sub-abilities are equal to roughly 1/3 of the strength of a main ability and can be changed, while main abilities are permanent. Splatoon released with a simple mode called Turf War, in which 2 teams fight to see who can control the most ground at the end of a 3-minute match. While covering the floor is the main objective, keeping pressure on your opponents and making sure you stay in control of key areas on the map is just as important. At its release, Splatoon only offered 1 game mode, 5 maps, and 29 weapon sets. This small amount of content, however, expanded quickly. 1 to 2 weapons were released every week following the game's release, with new maps being released every 2 weeks to a month. This stream of content continued through January of 2016, with a few large additions to gear being added throughout. Ranked mode offered players the option to break away from Turf War to play objective-based gameplay in a more competitive environment where wins and losses affect your ranking. Nintendo kept this mode locked away until a certain amount of players had hit level 10. Within 3 days of the game's release, far beyond Nintendo's expectations, enough players had hit the level, and we were given our first look into the objective game types. Ranked released with a mode called Splat Zones, a King of the Hill style game type where covering a specified area in your ink will capture a zone. Your opponents, in turn, can neutralize and capture the same zone with their ink. Both teams have a ticker that starts at 100 and ticks down 1 point for every second they have the zone. Whoever reaches 0 or has the least points at the end of 5 minutes wins the match. The following month, the second objective mode, titled Tower Control, was released. This starts with a single objective located at the center of the map. The tower is a mobile object that can be moved along a set path by standing on top of it. The tower slowly moves into the enemy's base, making it more difficult to push the closer you get to the end of the tower's path. Just as with Splat Zones, both teams start with 100 points, with points decreasing the farther the tower goes into the enemy base. Whoever reaches 0 or has the least points at the end of 5 minutes wins the match. The final game type was released in August of that year and is called Rainmaker. Much like Tower Control, a single objective spawns at the center of the map and must be pushed into the enemy team's base. The difference, however, is that the Rainmaker is carried and can be used as a weapon. Players start by popping the shield that surrounds the Rainmaker by shooting at it. This pop covers a large amount of ground and also splats nearby enemies caught in the blast. Players on either team are then able to grab the Rainmaker and can take whichever path they choose into the enemy's base. They can choose to either play defensively or dive headfirst into enemy territory. On either end of the map, there is a pedestal where you place the Rainmaker to win the match. Both teams start with 100 points, with this number decreasing the closer you get to the pedestal in the enemy team's base. Whoever reaches 0 or has the least amount of points at the end of 5 minutes wins the match. A year after release, Splatoon would boast 4 game modes, 15 maps, and 91 weapon sets. Maps for public play are offered in sets of 2 and rotate out every 4 hours. Turf War is offered continuously, while ranked modes cycle out with the maps. During the first week of July 2015, Splatoon introduced a special event called Splatfest. You'd pick a side to battle for, such as Team Cat or Team Dog, and you would fight alongside other members of your team in turf war matches within a 24-hour time frame. Splatfest presented beautiful night renditions of familiar stages with new music in the background. Splatfest would come around once a month and ended in July of 2016. What remains of the player base at this time is largely comprised of competitive players. During the first week of August 2015, a patch added a private battles mode, which allows 2 to 8 players to join a lobby and set whichever map and mode combination they desire. This mode allowed for organization of tournaments and for the competitive scene to develop into something beyond what Ranked offered. While the competitive scene in the West is relatively small at the time of posting this, the game garners a huge amount of attention in Japan, with some tournament streams gaining over 100,000 viewers. The Western scene, though small, is still very much active, with most of its members thriving and organizing events through Discord. Tournament series such as Monsoon, BNS, and SCL happen weekly, with larger tournaments such as Inkstorm and Supernova occurring intermittently. At this time, 2 major in-person tournaments have been hosted in the US by In-Game TV, Squidstorm and Don't Park on the Grass. During November 2016, a series of tournaments titled Splatoon Showdown Series marked the first series of Splatoon tournaments officially sponsored by Nintendo.
Is he gonna make the jump?
No! He got pushed back.
With the reveal of the Nintendo Switch, we got to see Splatoon acknowledged in a competitive light by Nintendo themselves, from showing players writing out strategies on a whiteboard to playing in front of an audience of thousands in a massive arena. No one quite knows what direction Splatoon is headed at this time, but for the competitive community, things are looking hopeful.